we'll go ahead and get started. Again, this is the City of Mesa HOME-ARP community meeting for community services. Thank you all for being here today. We're excited to get your perspectives on potential community needs that can be addressed using HOME-ARP funds. So I'm going to provide a little bit of a background on HOME-ARP so that everybody understands what the program is, how it can be used. I'm going to talk about the purpose of today's session, which is to collect community outreach, but I'll give you a little bit more detail around that. And then after that, we'll be going into a facilitated discussion with some specific questions about community services. So we'll be spending most of our time during this session on the discussion. So we're really hoping that folks are able to participate. You can come off of mute and share your thoughts. You can also add your thoughts to the chat for each question. But we're here to collect as much community input as we possibly can about the needs in the community that can be addressed with these funds. First, we'll do some introductions. My name is Jennifer Alpha. I'm a senior consultant with TDA Consulting, and TDA has been asked to assist the city with the development of the HOME-ARP allocation plan. I'm going to explain what the allocation plan is in just a bit. For the sake of time, I'll introduce the rest of our team. Doug Carlson is also with us today and will be facilitating the discussion portion of this session in just a bit. Alex, who you've probably met over email because she's helped to coordinate this meeting. And then Noah Woodward, who is collecting data and analyzing data as part of the allocation plan. And we have some folks with the city as well. So I'll turn it over to Michelle to say hello first.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Your input is very valuable. My name is Michelle Albanese. I'm the Housing and Community Development Director here at the City of Mesa.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your attendance today. My name is Justin Boyd, Housing and Community Development Administrator for the City of Mesa.
Great, thank you. Okay, so if you did just join us, if you can sign into the chat with your name, your organization, your zip code, and your email address, that will help us put together a sign-in sheet for today's session. So I want to start off by sharing a little bit with you about what is HOME-ARP. So HOME-ARP is a one-time allocation under the American Rescue Plan. So this is a response to the pandemic. And this program provides $5 billion to assist individuals, households who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, and other vulnerable populations by providing funds for housing, rental assistance, supportive services, and non-congregate shelter. So the objective of the program is to help reduce homelessness and increase housing stability. So there are participating jurisdictions across the country, also known as HUD grantees. There are 651 that qualified to receive an annual home program allocation for fiscal year 2021. And by virtue of being home program recipients, they were also eligible to receive this one-time HOME-ARP grant as well. And that includes the City of Mesa. And the city's allocation for HOME-ARP is $5.6 million, just over $5.6 million. Now, these funds were announced back in September of 2021. At that time, the requirements did not have a deadline for submitting your allocation plan, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. There is, however, a deadline now. In November, HUD said, we actually would like you to submit your plan by March 31st of 2023. So folks needed to kind of get in gear to get this plan created. And so the city's been working to collect data, and this is part of the outreach that we're doing here is to get community perspectives. So the allocation plan is a plan that needs to be developed. You can think of it sort of like a strategic plan that's going to guide the distribution of funds in terms of which activities the city will spend the money on. And to get to that decision, the plan requires collection and analysis of data. So we look at things like census data, ACS data, data from the COC. But in addition to that, we collect data from local sources, local service providers, organizations that are conducting their own studies, putting together annual plans, things like that, to try to build a more complete picture of what things look like on the ground in the city. So that is part of the plan. It's data analysis. That only gives us one part of the story. Where we really learn about what community needs are is through the community outreach. And so our community outreach process has 3 parts. One part is an online survey. So the online survey is open until February 3rd, and I'll ask Alex to drop the link for the survey into the chat. If you have not completed the survey yet, we'd love for you to complete it and share it. Share it with your family, your friends. If you have social media networks that you can share it with, or mailing lists, any way to help distribute this survey will be greatly appreciated. Folks are always more likely to complete something that someone they know has referred them to. So your help in getting the word out as far as possible will really help us round out our outreach. So that's the first part. It's a community survey online. The next part are these meetings. There are 4 community meetings. This is number 3 of 4. We had a meeting on homelessness and special needs yesterday. Earlier today, we had a meeting on affordable housing. This is the meeting on services. And then next week, on Wednesday night at 6 p.m., there will be another meeting where we'll be focusing mostly on services, but we'll also talk about housing as well. And that gives folks who maybe couldn't join during this weekday period an opportunity to join in the evening. So we welcome folks to share that opportunity with others as well, so that folks can join and have a discussion similar to this one today. So that's part 2. So we have the survey, we have the community meetings, and then the final part is that we are doing one-on-one stakeholder interviews with community partners who are serving people in the community. And we're able to get a little bit more of an expert perspective, ask them for data that they might be able to share. And so those meetings are ongoing. So all of these funds, I will talk a little bit about the allocation plan process and next steps at the end of our time here today, but the allocation plan will be published for a public comment period. So once it's drafted and decisions are made about proposed uses of the HOME-ARP funds, it will be published, and the community will have 15 days to review that draft and provide thoughts on the proposed uses of funds or anything else that you see in the plan. And so that is scheduled to happen on February 15th, is to have the plan published for 15 days. After that publication, it will then be submitted to HUD for review and approval. As I said, we'll talk more about sort of next steps at the end of the call, but just to know that these grant funds expire in September of 2030. And so after September 30th, 2030, the funds will no longer be available. So all funds need to be expended by that time. So just as a quick recap to better understand what HOME-ARP can do, there are 4 eligible activities that can be funded with HOME-ARP. These are the only 4 activities. So what you see on the screen is the whole scope of the HOME-ARP program. Now, grantees can choose to just fund one of these activity types. They can choose to fund a little bit of money to each activity type. It really depends on what needs are revealed through the allocation plan process, as well as what other resources are available in the communities. So if there's already funds that are available, as an example, for a tenant-based rental assistance, of course, there's always a greater need than we have funds available. So funds would be helpful to go towards tenant-based rental assistance, but maybe there's already a resource for that, but there's a greater need for one of these other types of activities, and there aren't as many resources for that activity, then the city could potentially choose to put more funds into that activity type. So once we get through the process of data analysis, community outreach, will better understand the needs, and the city can start to make decisions about how to divide the funds across these 4 eligible activities. And so the eligible activities are production or preservation of affordable housing, tenant-based rental assistance, supportive services, homeless prevention services, and housing counseling, and purchase and development of non-congregate shelter. So those are the 4 eligible uses. HOME-ARP also says that you must serve 4 distinct qualifying populations. So these qualifying populations are defined by the program. The definitions are very detailed, but in summary, those who can be served by HOME-ARP include people experiencing homelessness, whether they are sheltered or unsheltered, those currently housed but at risk of homelessness, people fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. And then finally, other families requiring services or housing assistance or to prevent homelessness. So vulnerable folks that are facing housing instability. So those are the 4 populations that can be served by HOME-ARP using those 4 activity types that I showed you on the last screen. So as I've said, the purpose of today's meeting is to gather information from the community about service needs of the folks that you serve if you're part of an organization, service needs that you know of just as a resident of the community, whether they're for yourself or for somebody that you know in your family or your friend group. So this is an opportunity for the community to provide information and perspectives around the need for services. So also, if anybody would happen to have data on the topics that we're talking about, we're always looking for more data that can supplement the plan. So we'd be grateful to receive that as well. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Doug, who is going to get us started on our discussion.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everybody. If you have participated in some of the other community meetings, you're familiar with this format. We have some questions that we want to ask as part of this consultation and data collection process related to housing and service needs in the communities, especially those for the qualifying populations that Jennifer outlined earlier. So let's start, and there are 2 ways that you can participate in this discussion. You are more than welcome to use the chat feature and to put your comments into the chat as we go through each of their 8 questions in total. So as we go through each question, you're welcome to put your comments in the chat, or you're welcome to also come off mute and just provide us your comments verbally if you choose to do it that way. Whatever you're most comfortable with, either one works just fine for our purposes of gathering this information and getting your input. So question 1, the first question that we want to ask you is, what services are most in demand for the populations you serve or the populations you're aware of that are qualifying populations? In particular, people who are homeless, at risk of homeless, people fleeing domestic violence, human trafficking, veterans, those folks in general. So again, you can use the chat. Jennifer has posted the question into the chat, so you can just look at it there. But we'd love to get your feedback on that particular question. Okay. Trying to help supplement people who can't make ends meet to some degree, I think, on Social Security. That's what I'm hearing. And then affordable housing combined with services. Heard that as well. Addiction, substance abuse, behavioral health. All very necessary. Yeah, the caregivers, that's a good point. I think that was in one of our prior meetings, but I don't think I pointed that one out as a good comment. As my wife would say, who has 80-plus-year-old parents who are starting to have some issues, the caregiver The caregiver item is a big one. So I appreciate that comment. Services for people who are elderly. We're hearing a lot about a growing population of seniors who are fitting into the category of either being vulnerable, at risk of homelessness, or who have actually already become homeless already. So we're hearing that a lot in our communications about HOME-ARP in the city of Mesa. Okay, I think we got most of the feedback on that question. Yeah, and case management, and along with the supportive services. Yeah. To the best of your knowledge, what services are well provided in the city already? And this can, and again, it's in the chat, but this can encompass a wide range of different types of services for a wide range of different populations. So give us your feedback on what you think is well provided within the community. In other words, needs little or no enhancement. Think of things like transportation services for seniors, employment and education, those kinds of things. Yeah, I would say community engagement is one of them too. Yeah, the city's been amazing to work with in terms of their engagement and their information sharing on HOME-ARP. So totally agree with that. Any other services that people want to point out that they think are well provided by within the city? I'm not sorry, not just by the city, within the city. It's been a long day. This is what is our our 8th meeting on this today, it seems like, but my apologies. Employment services and a workforce center. That's good to know. Thank you. Yeah. We're hearing a lot about employment services and helping people with jobs with respect to this program, being able to get to jobs. ERA, amazing job of ERA provision. The dashboard information is amazing. That's on the city's website in terms of the number of persons served, etc. It's very good. Veteran services and housing, good, thank you. Yeah, great. All really important, so thank you. Good. So let's go to the third question, Jennifer. Next question is, how can services help promote housing stability for those who are currently experiencing homelessness? So this is people who are defined as homeless. And so what services can be provided that can promote their stability in housing? So this is strictly about services, not types of housing. And again, the question's in the chat. So in order to remain stable, right, how can we deal with folks who are currently homeless? Yeah, life skills training, independent living, and employment services have come up multiple times as well. It's a really good one. I think that mentors, people who can help them. Behavioral health is really important. There's definitely an increased need for behavioral health services across the board, not just for homeless people, but I think for almost everybody. Anything else service related? Mental health services, yeah, that's the first time it's been mentioned in this forum, but yeah, I think that's an important one as well. Yeah, and then services about how to navigate the rental market, how to fill out paperwork, how to deal with those types of things, how to be a good renter, how to not, create situations where you're at risk of losing your deposit or your unit. So yeah, those are all good, really good.
I had a question for Aaron, who had commented in the chat, community court, and I wanted to make sure we got it under the right question. So Aaron, if you could just let us know if that was a response to question 2 or 3.
Yeah, I didn't see that one. I think she might have sent that to you.
It's just to me. Either way.
Well, regardless, love to know. Oh, no, she said it. I see it. I'm so sorry. They were coming in so fast, I missed it. Yeah,
Question 2. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just want to make
Yeah.
sure we have it in the right spot.
no, she did. I'm sorry, Erin. Yeah, she did put that in there. Okay, a couple more comments coming in. Yeah, I've heard a lot about having services available on site with the housing, so that would include case management, people being there to provide supportive services. I've heard a lot about that today, which I think is important. Yeah, and helping people navigate and get access to benefits. Really good. Yeah. Yeah, benefits are very important. You know, some people don't know that they are. We can go to the next question, Jennifer, but a lot of people don't know what they're eligible for and have no way to know how to navigate, including Social Security disability, which is not easy to navigate, in my opinion. Okay. So this is the next question, right? This is at risk, right, Jennifer? Okay. So the next question 4 is, how can services help promote housing stability for those who are at risk of homelessness? So those are people who are vulnerable to falling into homelessness because they're behind on rent or have other issues that could unfortunately put them into a homeless situation. Jennifer, poverty mitigation. Can you give us a little bit more? That's interesting. What do you mean by that when you get a chance, please? Yeah, budgeting, job training, kind of learning how to manage your resources. That's definitely part of trying to not fall into homelessness. How to not get behind on bills, have high interest rate payments, credit card payments. Yeah, those are all definitely. Oh, exactly. Okay, diversion. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, so that's exactly. So find a way to help them with whatever it is that they need in the moment to keep them from being evicted. So that could be a small amount of money or a small interaction or intervention with a landlord could keep somebody from falling into homelessness. And it's not very expensive and it's often very successful. It's a good one. Thank you. Centralized location for information and services to contact when you need help, when you're on the brink of homelessness. That's, yeah, so that's not really navigation, but that's information and referral, but it could be combined with navigation. So I like that one. That's a really good one. Yeah. Yeah, that would definitely help create improve stability. Thank you. Yeah, those are great responses. Okay, let's go, I think, to question 5. And community communication and outreach, definitely. Yeah, and then again, facilitating and helping to navigate, because I do believe that there's some real issues with that. Yeah, with folks being able to understand and navigate the resources that are available to them. Not you. I have 20 somethings that are trying to figure out how to navigate things. So you think it's natural, but it's not. So what gaps exist? Question 5 is what we're on now. What gaps exist specifically for those who are fleeing domestic violence or human trafficking? So that could be housing or services. But what gaps exist specifically for that population that you're aware of? Remember, these are subpopulations within the qualifying populations. They are called out specifically, however, for HOME-ARP. So we want to make sure that we both collect data and get information on what we think the needs are for people who are victims of domestic violence or human trafficking. Accessible resources quickly. Yes. Availability of safe shelter. I actually heard that several times today in some of the meetings that I had. The word safe was used, safe housing, safe shelter was used often. So I appreciate that. Language barriers, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Dealing with language barriers, helping people communicate and navigate. Shelter, yeah, shelter hasn't really come up much in this discussion, but Yeah, the question is whether there's a need for more specialized and smaller non-congregate shelter settings. That has come up as well for these populations and others. So that's a good point. Again, we're not making choices for the city. We're just trying to navigate and help them with the collection of information.
I have a question for community education. The comment was that language barriers is a
Mhm.
gap, and I wondered if they could elaborate on which languages specifically.
You could throw that back in the chat again if you don't mind. Yeah, my fault. I assumed it was Spanish. It could be multiple languages. Thanks, Jennifer.
Hi, that was me. Yes, there is multiple languages that, there's not enough translation services or interpretation services for. I was talking specifically about Spanish just because there is a lack of resources for the Spanish speaking community, and not enough resources. A lot of the domestic violence victims end up staying in their situation because they can't find that help that they need.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Childcare, yeah, absolutely. Navigating the education system, childcare, counseling, and being safe. Yeah, I heard that again today as well. I heard also, like I said, helping parents navigate, especially single parents, navigate the education system for their children and to advocate for their children was also a neat critical service for this population, which was a really good comment. Okay, question 6, I think we're on, Jennifer. Okay. What gaps exist specifically for other vulnerable populations? So that would include seniors, those with disabilities, families, etc. Physical and mental disabilities would be, any disability would be in this category, by the way. So don't limit yourself in terms of what you respond to with respect to type of disability. This would cover any disability. So housing and service gaps for vulnerable populations, seniors, those who are disabled, families, other units. There's the question in the chat. Other family units. These could be very similar gaps to ones that you've already identified, by the way, but please feel free to put them in the chat anyways, or to let us know off your mic. Come off mute. I know we have a lot of senior advocates out there, so. Accessibility, yeah. And transportation, yeah. So you would have to have, right, yeah. Utility assistance, that has not come up much. I did hear a comment that the state is still helping with utility assistance to some degree, but we haven't verified that, but that's a really good one. Thank you. Supportive services within the disabled community. Yeah, I like that one. That's a good one too. So it'd be kind of specific, tailored types of services, I assume, for people in that community. I think that's great. Anything else? Gaps or housing gaps as well, not just services. Yeah, issues with being vulnerable in one way or another, susceptible to fraud. If you're talking about seniors, those types of things, being bullied or intimidated in one way or another. Yeah, that's a very real thing. Yeah, another good one, housing that has room for disabled family member, right, and their caretaker, right? So basically possibly multi-generational housing that provides for the care of a disabled family member but allows the family to stay intact. Great, love that one. Right, and then helping people find ways to get into affordable housing. Good. and learning in some cases how to deal with online applications and all that other stuff that happens now, which is mostly electronic based and some people are not familiar with. So really good. Yeah, right. And then just education about what services are available and how to connect to them. Great. Those are great comments. Okay, next question, I think, Jennifer. Yeah, yeah, dealing with inflationary pressures was one of the other comments too. That's a tough one. Yeah. Social Security took its largest jump this year because of inflation. So that was some good news for people on fixed incomes. What gap? I mean, I know it's not going to cover everything, but it's better than a very small increase. Question 7, what gaps exist in services for veterans? That's in the chat again. If you, particularly if you are connected in any way to veteran service organizations, we'd love to hear from you right now if you're out there, because we really want to know what is out there, or what is not out there, I should say, in terms of services for veterans. So anybody that works with veteran services, love to know your feedback. So again, more education, yeah, time delays, waiting for care, not knowing what they qualify for. Yeah. Yeah, and they do get a lot of support. The VA is amazing at providing medical and supportive services and case management, especially for VASH, as Mary knows. So that is a great program. I'm a huge fan of VASH. I don't know if people resist housing, Charlotte, just to answer your question. I think that the accessibility and understanding how to get into affordable housing is the real issue. The Mesa does have vouchers available, as Mary has said, which is very unusual. Their lease up rate is usually near 100%. So this is a very unusual time. It's a housing market like I've never seen, and I've worked in the housing market for almost 35 years, and in one way or another. So yeah. Background issues, criminal records, those types of things are brought up often in terms of getting units and not passing the screening, initial screening. So yeah, that's definitely an issue. Thanks, Mary. We'll go to the next question. Yeah, good. I'm glad there are landlords that want to work with veterans. That's fantastic. And counseling, yeah. Next question is about fair housing challenges. What fair housing challenges do you see in your community? What data or information do you have that's available or know about that helps us understand the gaps in the current housing, shelter and services system? And is there any information that you're aware of in terms of how there are challenges by certain racial or ethnicity groups? So we are trying to collect info. It's very hard to find information on this, by the way. So we're trying to collect anything we can on, even anecdotal, about what some of the known fair housing challenges are in the community. It's not really something that's published data unless it's complaints, fair housing complaints that are filed, for example. Very difficult. Any feedback on fair housing challenges? Yeah, now this could affect, yeah, so background checks, I would agree. Discrimination against elders. So yeah, that's absolutely true. But those issues with records, credit histories, background checks are probably disproportionate by race and ethnicity in terms of that being an issue. So I would just add to that, that I think that that's probably disproportionate for certain parts of the population, to say the least. So I think that's a really good point. I'm sure it's disproportionate, given that what we know about the composition of the prison population. Okay, any other comments on question 8? Yeah, exactly. Evictions for one reason or another, rent hikes, ways to discriminate against people, not directly, but indirectly, typically by those types of tactics, are definitely to some degree discriminatory, and not accepting vouchers is a huge issue. Yeah. And there are vouchers available, as Mary said. Yes, I agree. I think that if you've done your time, you should be able to find a place to live. Okay. One more. Is this the last one? I'm sorry, Jennifer. I forgot to look at this questions. Okay. What opportunities for collaboration do you see as part of the HOME-ARP consultation and planning process? So any connections that we're not aware of that could be made or should be made in the community, anything that you've seen that's effective that has happened in Mesa for other programs or other services? Are there things out there that you can think of that will help you in terms of connectivity? To your, Akila, to your comment, hopefully legal aid services to some degree is available to help renters out. But usually that's the last, that's the hardest thing to navigate, is getting to legal aid and somehow winning your legal aid case. Yeah, really difficult. So any opportunities for collaboration that we haven't thought of or people haven't communicated to us before? I mean, I've seen the City of Mesa Police Department mentioned a couple of times. I will say that that is a potential opportunity for collaboration to some degree, with respect to street outreach and training, etc. Although that's not part of this grant, so I have to make that clear. But the United Way has not been, thanks Jennifer, the United Way has not been mentioned yet as a potential partner. And that's a really interesting and good comment, because the United Way is virtually everywhere and often has resources and churches. Yeah, the faith community. Thank you. It's a good one. And St. Vincent de Paul, yeah, which is also everywhere pretty much. Yes. Yeah, and good. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, legal services can help with some of those issues related to discrimination, right, or access to housing. Okay. Those were great. Thank you. Thank you so much for those comments. I think we've slowed down. So Jennifer, I'll turn it back to you to kind of describe what's happening. Keep using the chat, by the way, to throw more things out. If you're just late getting it in, we're happy to take those comments as we keep talking. But I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer, just kind of talk about how we're going to finish up this process and close out the meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. Definitely, if you continue to have thoughts, add it to the chat. But if you have thoughts after this meeting, we'd still love to hear them. My email is on the screen there. Doug will put his email into the chat, so you have his email as well. And you can definitely reach out to us if you have other thoughts, if you think of data sources that you think we should look at. We're trying to get as much information as possible before we wrap up a draft of the plan, which is scheduled to be wrapped up about the first week of February. As I mentioned earlier, there will be a public comment period. So around February 15th, the draft will be published for 15 days. During that time, you have an opportunity to review the plan and submit comments to the city. The city will then consider those comments and respond to them through edits to the plan. The plan will then be submitted to HUD. So once it's submitted to HUD, HUD has 45 days to review it. If they come up with questions or places where they'd like a little more clarity, they may come back to the city and ask for revisions that could potentially extend the approval a little bit longer. But if it's approved during that 45 days at the latest, we're then looking at about mid-May for an approved plan. If they want some changes, we could be moving into June for an approved plan. But at a minimum, you can expect that by the summer, there will be an approved HOME-ARP allocation plan for the city. The city will then be able to access those funds and start implementing the plan that was described in the allocation plan. So that's the overall process. We're really grateful for your participation today. Other ways that you can chime in include that survey. So we'll let Alex drop the survey link in the chat one more time. Please feel free to complete that survey if you haven't. Share it with your networks, your mailing lists, your social media, your friends, your family, everyone who's a resident in Mesa or who serves Mesa residents. That is a great way to provide additional input. We do one more community meeting next Wednesday at 6 p.m. So you can sign up for that as well. And of course, if you do have any other thoughts, feel free to reach out to one of us. But thank you so much for your time. This has been wonderful. We had some really good dialogue going in the chat. We learned a lot and we're really grateful for your time. So have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend. And oh,